The train? She felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in months. She walked with a different purpose, her shoulders no longer hunched in defeat but squared with a new kind of strength. The encounter had a lasting impact on both of them. For Eleanor, the subway became a symbol of a turning point. She began to see the world differently, not as a series of problems to be solved, but as a rich tapestry of human experiences. She found herself reaching out to other new mothers, sharing her own vulnerabilities and offering the kind of quiet support she had so desperately needed. She understood that her wealth could be a tool for good, a way to help others rather than a shield to hide behind. She started a foundation to support single parents, funding music lessons and childcare programs in underserved communities. She never forgot the man who had given her the greatest gift, understanding. For Marcus, the encounter was a reaffirmation of his own quiet strength. He had always felt a little invisible in the fast-paced city, a cog in the machine of a society that valued wealth over humanity. But that day, his simple act of kindness had a monumental impact. It was a reminder that his true value lay not in his bank account or his job title, but in his compassion and his humanity. The encounter gave him a renewed sense of confidence. He started playing his guitar more, writing new songs, and eventually, with the help of a few friends, he booked a small gig at a local cafe. He never forgot the woman who had looked at him not as an underdog, but as a hero. The lullaby of the subway had been more than just a song. It was a bridge between two worlds, a quiet miracle that proved that in the middle of a chaotic, impersonal city, a simple act of empathy could be the most powerful force of all. And in the quiet hum of their hearts, both Eleanor and Marcus would forever carry the memory of that day, a silent melody of connection that echoed far beyond the subway tracks. The day had started like so many others for Eleanor, a race against the clock. Her alarm had gone off at 5 a.m., and she had jumped into her routine with the precision of a trained athlete. A 10-minute meditation followed by a quick shower and a meticulously planned outfit. But her plans had been derailed by Chloe, who had woken up screaming at 3 a.m. and refused to go back to sleep. Eleanor, who had once prided herself on her ability to function on 4 hours of sleep, now felt like a zombie. She had tried everything from the gentle bounce to the rhythmic shush, but nothing had worked. The screaming had continued unabated, a testament to her helplessness. As she stood on the subway platform, the morning sun felt like a spotlight of judgment. She had been so sure she could handle it all. The demanding career, the perfect home, the beautiful baby. But Chloe's cries were a constant reminder of her lack of control. Marcus's day had been different but no less draining. He had woken up at 4:30 a.m. to get to his first job on a construction site across town. He had left Maya sleeping soundly in her bed, a quiet moment he cherished. His work was hard and physically demanding, a stark contrast to the intellectual battles he once dreamed of fighting with his music. He had loved playing his guitar, pouring his soul into every chord and lyric, but his wife's death had changed everything. He had been forced to trade his passion for a paycheck, his dreams for the grim reality of a two-job existence. As he had watched Eleanor, he hadn't seen a woman of privilege but a mother in distress. He had seen the same raw helplessness that he had felt when his wife died, leaving him alone with a tiny, fragile baby. His act was not a calculated decision but a reflex of empathy, a recognition of a shared human experience that transcended social class. The subway car, once a symbol of their different worlds, became a sanctuary. The passengers who had been so quick to judge were now quiet and respectful. Some even offered small smiles of encouragement. In the middle of a loud, chaotic city, a moment of profound grace had been born. It was a quiet miracle that proved that in the middle of a chaotic, impersonal city, a simple act of empathy could be the most powerful force of all. And in the quiet hum of their hearts, both Eleanor and Marcus would forever carry the memory of that day, a silent melody of connection that echoed far beyond the subway tracks. For the next few weeks, Eleanor couldn't stop thinking about Marcus. His simple act had cracked her carefully constructed worldview wide open. She had always equated success with money, with power, with having the right things and being in the right rooms. But Marcus, with his worn-out jeans and calloused hands, had shown her a different kind of wealth, the kind that couldn't be bought or earned. It was a wealth of kindness, of empathy, of quiet strength. She found herself listening more, not just to Chloe's needs, but to the needs of the people around her. She started talking to the other mothers in her neighborhood, Sharing her vulnerabilities and hearing their stories of sleepless nights and overwhelming anxiety, she realized she wasn't alone, and that her struggles were a universal part of the human experience. Eleanor's perspective shift had a ripple effect. At work, she found herself less interested in the ruthless pursuit of profit and more in the human element of business. She started a new initiative to provide childcare for working mothers in her company, a program that had been rejected in the past. Her colleagues, who had once seen her as a cold, calculating machine, now saw a woman with a newfound compassion. She was still a brilliant executive, but now her brilliance was infused with a deep sense of purpose. She had learned that true leadership wasn't about control but about empathy, and that the most valuable asset was not data, but humanity. Marcus, too, was changed by the encounter. He had always felt a little invisible in the fast-paced city, a cog in the machine of a society that valued wealth over humanity. But that day, his simple act of kindness had a monumental impact. It was a reminder that his true value lay not in his bank account or his job title, but in his compassion and his humanity. The encounter gave him a renewed sense of confidence. He started playing his guitar more, writing new songs, and eventually, with the help of a few friends, he booked a small gig at a local cafe. He never forgot the woman who had looked at him not as an underdog, but as a hero. The lullaby of the subway had been more than just a song. It was a bridge between two worlds, a quiet miracle that proved that in the middle of a chaotic, impersonal city, a simple act of empathy could be the most powerful force of all. And in the quiet hum of their hearts, both Eleanor and Marcus would forever carry the memory of that day, a silent melody of connection that echoed far beyond the subway tracks. Years passed, and their paths would cross again in unexpected ways. Eleanor's foundation for single parents had grown into a major organization, providing not just financial support, but also mentorship and community. One day she was reviewing a new grant application, and a name caught her eye: Marcus Jones. His application was for a grant to open a small music school for children in underserved neighborhoods. Eleanor's heart skipped a beat. It was him. She called him immediately. Marcus answered, his voice older but still kind. He didn't recognize her at first, but when she reminded him of the subway and the lullaby, a slow smile spread across his face. "Eleanor," he said, his voice filled with genuine warmth. "I knew we would meet again." They met for coffee a few days later, and it was as if no time had passed at all. They talked for hours, catching up on each other's lives. Eleanor told him about her foundation and her shift in perspective. Marcus told her about his music school and how he had finally found a way to combine his passion with his purpose. Their second meeting was a testament to the power of a single moment of kindness. They had been strangers, but a simple act of empathy had forged an unbreakable bond. They became friends and colleagues, working together to create a world where every child, no matter their background, had the opportunity to discover their own unique melody. Eleanor learned to let go of her need for control, to embrace the messy, unpredictable beauty of life. Marcus, in turn, learned to trust in the kindness of others, to accept help when it was offered. They were two people from different worlds, but their shared love for their children and their unwavering belief in the power of humanity had brought them together. And in the quiet hum of their hearts, both Eleanor and Marcus would forever carry the memory of that day, a silent melody of connection that echoed far beyond the subway tracks, a testament to the power of a single act of kindness to change two lives forever. It was a beautiful symphony of a simple act of kindness, a testament to the power of human connection, and a reminder that true wealth is measured in the kindness you give away. The months that followed the subway encounter were a whirlwind of small but profound changes for Eleanor. She started to see the city not as a series of obstacles to navigate, but as a living, breathing organism filled with stories. The subway, once a place of dread, became a place of observation. She would find herself watching other parents, their faces a mix of joy and fatigue, and offer a small, knowing smile. She'd offer to help a woman with a stroller up the stairs or hold the door for a father juggling a baby and a bag of groceries. These were tiny, insignificant acts, but for Eleanor they felt monumental. They were her first steps into a world she had previously only observed from a distance, a world of shared humanity. Eleanor's life had been a series of meticulously planned ascents. From her first internship at a boutique consulting firm to her current position as a senior vice president at a global finance company, She had operated in a world of clean lines and controlled outcomes. She was a master of the hostile takeover, a tactician of market downturns, a woman who saw every challenge as a problem to be charted, analyzed, and executed. Her mind was a fortress of data points and strategic thinking, her posture a testament to years of unwavering confidence. She was, by all accounts, a force of nature, a woman who bent the world to her will, not the other way around. When she learned she was pregnant, she approached it with the same methodical precision. She had read every book, attended every workshop, and filled her home with the most advanced baby gadgets money could buy. She would be the perfect mother, a high-achieving executive who effortlessly balanced her career and a family. It was a new challenge, yes, but no different from a merger negotiation. A puzzle she was certain she could solve. She was prepared for everything except for this. This was the antithesis of control. The city's subway car was a crucible of humanity, a symphony of rattling metal, and the low, collective groan of weary commuters. The air was thick with the scent of hot plastic and stale coffee. And for Eleanor, it had become a public stage for her most profound and humiliating failure. In her arms, her 6-month-old daughter, Chloe, was a tempest. A tiny, furious siren, Chloe wailed with a singular, piercing intensity that seemed to defy the laws of physics. The sound was not a simple cry. It was a shriek of unadulterated distress that ricocheted off the grimy windows, cut through the clamor of the train, and lodged itself directly into the embarrassed core of Eleanor's being. Her bespoke blazer, a $100 garment that had once felt like a suit of armor, now felt like a soggy straitjacket. Her perfectly coiled hair, a testament to her morning routine, had begun to unravel, mirroring her own internal state. The designer diaper bag at her feet, filled with expensive organic rattles and European pacifiers, seemed to mock her with its uselessness. Nothing, absolutely nothing, worked. The pacifier was spit out with a renewed vigor. The rattle was batted away with a flailing arm. The gentle sway she had perfected in her nursery only seemed to intensify the infant's fury. Eleanor felt the palpable pressure of the judgmental stares. A woman with a folded newspaper held it up like a shield, her disapproval a silent accusation. A group of teenagers whispered and snickered behind cupped hands, their youthful indifference a painful contrast to her adult despair. An elderly man with a weary face simply sighed, his disapproval a heavy, visible weight in the cramped space. Each high-pitched cry was a new wave of public humiliation, a spotlight on her most glaring incompetence. She, the woman who had negotiated multi-million-dollar deals and commanded respect in a male-dominated industry, was utterly defeated by a creature she loved more than anything in the world. The journey felt endless, each station a new stop on her tour of inadequacy. She was trapped in a public spotlight, and the isolation she felt was a physical weight pressing in on her from all sides. The world she had built, the one where competence and control were paramount, was crumbling in the face of a single, inconsolable cry. Across the aisle, in a quiet pocket of calm, sat Marcus. His life was a world away from Eleanor's. A widower since his daughter Maya was an infant, he had traded in his dreams of being a full-time musician for the practical realities of 2 jobs, just to keep a roof over their heads. He was a construction worker by day, his hands calloused and his back aching, and a dishwasher by night, the relentless heat and steam a familiar companion. His jeans were faded, his t-shirt worn soft from countless washes, but his presence was one of quiet strength and profound patience. He had learned these things not from a book or a corporate seminar, but from the raw, beautiful chaos of single parenthood. He knew the quiet desperation of a tired parent, the nights spent pacing a creaky floorboard, the sheer exhaustion that settled deep into your bones like a physical ailment. He had faced moments of overwhelming grief and loneliness, where the weight of his responsibilities felt unbearable. But through it all there was Maya, a bright, unwavering star in his universe. Maya, with the wide, perceptive eyes of a child who had learned to read emotions before she could read words, was the first to notice. She saw past the designer clothes and the polished facade. She saw a woman in pain, a mother fighting a battle she was losing. She saw the familiar strain she had witnessed on her own father's face on his hardest days. Without a word, she nudged Marcus's arm, her small gesture a silent plea. Marcus looked up, his gaze settling on Eleanor's tear-streaked face. In her eyes he saw a mirroring of the profound loneliness and helplessness he had felt so many times. He didn't see a woman with a difficult baby. He saw a fellow soldier in the war of parenthood, a person in a moment of crisis. The need to help was not a choice but an instinct, a muscle memory forged by 1,000 nights of soothing his own child. He knew that in a world of judgment, what she needed most was a moment of grace. With a slow, deliberate movement, Marcus stood. The clatter of the train cars and the high-pitched wails of Chloe still filled the air, but something in his simple act commanded a hush. He didn't approach Eleanor, recognizing that in her state an approaching stranger might only intensify her anxiety. Instead, he remained where he was, a few feet away, a non-threatening presence in the chaos. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the memory of his wife's gentle smile fill his mind, a silent prayer for guidance. Then, in a voice that was barely a whisper at first, he began to hum. It was a simple tune, a melody stripped of all artifice, a lullaby his late wife had taught him, a lullaby he had hummed to Maya countless nights to ward off bad dreams and quiet, restless energy. His voice was not strong or polished. It was gentle, a thread of pure compassion weaving its way through the cacophony. The melody was born not of practice but of love and experience. It was the sound of a tired father's devotion, and it was a language that transcended all boundaries. The effect was not immediate, but it was profound. Chloe's piercing cries faltered, a single hitched breath interrupting her wails. She tilted her head, her unfocused eyes searching for the source of the unexpected solace. The judgmental glares of the other passengers softened into confused curiosity, then into an almost reverent silence. Marcus hummed on, his gaze a steady beacon of kindness. Slowly, miraculously, Chloe's crying softened into whimpers, then soft, contented gurgles. Her tiny body, which had been rigid with distress, went slack in Eleanor's arms, and her thumb found its way to her mouth. She was mesmerized, her small eyes fixed on the face of the kind stranger who had offered a gift more valuable than any toy. The noise on the train car seemed to melt away, replaced by the simple, ancient comfort of a song. The very air around them seemed to shimmer. The grimy subway car transformed into a sanctuary, a sacred space where kindness had defeated chaos. Eleanor, who had been on the verge of a complete breakdown, felt the tension in her shoulders dissolve, replaced by a seismic wave of relief that brought fresh tears to her eyes. These were not tears of frustration or humiliation, but of gratitude and awe. She looked at Marcus, a man she would have typically overlooked on the street, and saw a profound humanity she had never expected. He hadn't offered judgment or advice. He had offered solace, a piece of himself, a simple, beautiful act that had reached her in a way no wealth, status, or power ever could. He had seen her not as a failure, but as a fellow human being in need of a gentle hand. In that moment, on that rattling subway car, the chasm of their different lives was bridged by a simple lullaby. Eleanor had always believed that success was measured in what you accumulated, but as she held her now sleeping child, she understood that true wealth was measured in the kindness you gave away. She would forever carry the quiet, humming rhythm of his kindness in her heart. The train pulled into the next station, its brakes groaning. The spell was broken. Marcus moved to take his seat, but Eleanor, her voice a fragile whisper, stopped him. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. I don't know what to say." Marcus gave a gentle, understanding smile. "You don't have to say anything," he said simply. "We've all been there. Parenthood is tough." He motioned to his daughter, now quietly resting her head on his shoulder. "That's how Maya learned to sleep on the bus." Eleanor offered a small, watery laugh. She had spent a fortune on sound-canceling bassinets and white noise machines, and all it had taken was a stranger's hum. The two of them talked for the remaining stops. Eleanor learned about Marcus's construction job, about his late wife, about his dream of one day playing his music in a small club. He, in turn, listened to her story of boardroom battles and the unexpected loneliness of her life. They were two people from vastly different worlds, yet they found a profound commonality in the struggles of raising a child. When Eleanor's stop arrived, she stood, Chloe a warm weight in her arms. "I'm Eleanor," she said, offering a genuine, heartfelt smile. I hope we meet again." Marcus nodded, his own smile reaching his eyes. "I'm Marcus. I'm sure we will." As Eleanor stepped off her office, her transformation was met with a mix of confusion and skepticism. Her colleagues, who had admired her ruthless efficiency, were perplexed by her newfound focus on soft skills. When she first proposed the idea of a foundation to support single parents, she was met with a wall of corporate cynicism. Eleanor, that's a noble idea. Her boss, a man who saw the world in spreadsheets, had said with a condescending smile, but is it good for the bottom line? She had to fight for every dollar, every resource, every meeting, but this time she was fighting for something more than a profit margin. She was fighting for Marcus, for Chloe, for all the parents like them who were struggling in silence. This new purpose fueled her, giving her a strength she had never known, a resilience that went deeper than any strategic plan. Meanwhile, Marcus was facing his own battles. The dream of opening a music school was a faint melody in the back of his mind, but the reality of his 2 jobs and the demands of raising Maya made it feel impossible. The subway encounter had given him a burst of confidence, but the daily grind threatened to extinguish it. There were days he came home, his back aching and his spirit weary, and he would look at his guitar in the corner and feel a pang of regret. But then he would think of Eleanor, the way she had looked at him with such profound gratitude, and it would remind him that his kindness had value, that his skills were worth something beyond a paycheck. He began to play his guitar again, not just for himself, but for Maya. He would teach her the simple chords, the familiar melodies, and in her innocent joy, he would find his own purpose renewed. The grant application process for his music school was long and arduous. He spent countless nights filling out forms, writing proposals, and trying to articulate a dream that felt too big for his reality. He was a construction worker, not a grant writer, and the language of bureaucracy was a foreign tongue. He was rejected more times than he could count, but he never gave up. He would think of Eleanor, a woman who had taught him that grace could be found in the most unexpected places, and he would try again. The day Eleanor saw his grant application was a turning point for both of them. His name, Marcus Jones, jumped off the page, and the description of his dream, a small music school for children in underserved neighborhoods, was a direct echo of the conversation they had on the subway years ago. She knew without a doubt that this was the same man. When she called him, his voice was hesitant at first, but when she mentioned the subway and the lullaby, she heard the flood of recognition in his voice. "Eleanor," he said, his voice filled with genuine warmth. "I knew we would meet again." Their second meeting at a quiet cafe was a reunion of 2 souls who were no longer strangers. They talked for hours, catching up on each other's lives, but also delving into the deeper lessons they had learned. Eleanor shared the story of her foundation, the corporate resistance she faced, and how the memory of his kindness had been her constant inspiration. Marcus told her about the long journey to the grant application, the rejections he had faced, and how he had never given up, a quiet testament to the resilience he had learned from his struggles and his hope that his passion could become his purpose. Their partnership was a beautiful synergy of their 2 worlds. Eleanor, with her strategic mind and corporate connections, helped Marcus navigate the world of fundraising and grant management. Marcus, with his deep-rooted kindness and practical wisdom, helped Eleanor see the human element in her foundation's work, reminding her that every dollar they raised was a life they were touching. They worked together to build the music school, a small building in a bustling neighborhood that was filled with the sound of children's laughter and the sweet, melodic hum of a guitar. The climax of their journey came years later, at the grand opening of the Lullaby Foundation Music School. The small auditorium was packed with parents and children, a testament to the community they had built. Both Eleanor and Marcus stood on the stage, ready to speak. Eleanor, a woman who had once navigated high-stakes presentations with cool composure, felt a lump in her throat. She looked at Marcus, and he gave her a small, reassuring smile. Eleanor began to speak, her voice clear and strong, but filled with a new kind of emotion. She told the story of the subway, of the screaming baby, and of the stranger who had given her a moment of peace. She spoke of how a simple act of kindness had changed the course of her life, and how she had learned that true wealth was not measured in dollars, but in empathy. Then, it was Marcus's turn. He stood, his guitar in hand, and a gentle hush fell over the room. He didn't give a polished speech. Instead, he began to hum the same simple lullaby he had hummed on the subway years ago. The melody was familiar, and as he sang, the children in the audience began to hum along. It was a beautiful, spontaneous chorus of shared humanity, a testament to the power of a single act of kindness to create a legacy. He spoke of his late wife, of his daughter, of the long journey he had taken to get to this moment. He spoke of Eleanor, a woman who had given him a chance to live his dream, and of a subway car that had become a sanctuary for two tired souls. The lullaby of the subway had been more than just a song. It was a bridge between two worlds, a quiet miracle that proved that in the middle of a chaotic, impersonal city, a simple act of empathy could be the most powerful force of all. And in the quiet hum of their hearts, both Eleanor and Marcus would forever carry the memory of that day, a silent melody of connection that echoed far beyond the subway tracks, a testament to the power of a single act of kindness to change two lives forever. It was a beautiful symphony of a simple act of kindness, a testament to the power of human connection, and a reminder that true wealth is measured in the kindness you give away. The two of them, a high-powered executive and a humble musician, had found a profound commonality in the struggles of raising a child, and in their shared commitment to helping others. They had created a beautiful legacy that would continue to grow, one simple act of kindness at a time. The legacy they built was not just a foundation or a music school, but a living, breathing testament to the quiet miracle of compassion in a chaotic world. It was a reminder that in every corner of the world there are people waiting to offer a moment of grace, and that all it takes to change a life is a single, heartfelt hum. The air in the subway car was thick with the silent judgment of 100 strangers, each glare a pinprick against Michelle's already frayed nerves. She was a millionaire by inheritance, a woman who owned penthouse apartments and drove luxury cars. Yet in this moment she felt poorer than she ever had. Her wealth was a useless currency against the deafening, synchronized cries of her twin babies, Baby A and Baby B. The high-pitched wails seemed to vibrate through the very steel of the train, a relentless, painful symphony that no amount of money could silence. Michelle, hunched over a double stroller, felt the hot sting of tears behind her eyes. Exhaustion was a physical weight on her shoulders, a constant bone-deep ache that had become the unwelcome companion of new motherhood. The endless nights, the feeding schedules, the constant worry, all had culminated in this public, humiliating cacophony. She felt the eyes on her, saw the subtle shakes of heads, the hurried glances away. They saw a mother who couldn't cope, a failure. The subway car, once a simple mode of transportation, had transformed into a glass box of despair, and she was trapped inside. Across from her, Chris, a single father with kind eyes and a tired smile, watched the scene unfold. His daughter Sophie sat quietly beside him, a world away in her own imagination. In her small hands she held a worn-out hand puppet, a friendly, fuzzy monster with mismatched googly eyes and a mop of bright blue yarn for hair. Sophie, who was accustomed to the whimsical world her father, a part-time children's entertainer, created for her, saw not a spectacle of distress, but an opportunity for magic. She gently nudged her father, her gaze fixed on the screaming twins. Chris, a man who spoke the silent language of children, understood. He took the puppet from her, a familiar warmth spreading through his hand. He slipped it on, and in that moment he ceased to be Chris, the weary father. He became Barnaby, the friendly monster, with a gentle, playful voice that was barely more than a whisper. Chris made the puppet talk. Barnaby's head bobbed, its googly eyes jiggling with an exaggerated comical curiosity. "Well, hello there, little ones." The puppet's voice cooed, soft and melodic, weaving its way through the din. "My goodness, you sound like a couple of brave little dragons. But are you sure you're not just a pair of fluffy kittens pretending to be loud?" The absurdity of the words, the puppet's vibrant colors, and Chris's genuine, engaging tone cut through the thick air of the subway car like a light beam. One of the twins, Baby A, seemed to pause mid-cry, her chest hiccuping as her eyes, wide with surprise, fixated on the blue monster. Barnaby waved a fluffy hand, and Baby A's wail transformed into a curious gurgle. The other twin, Baby B, followed suit, her sobs softening into a series of small, inquisitive squeaks. Chris moved the puppet, making Barnaby peekaboo from behind his hand, its voice full of playful mischief. The twins, captivated by the spectacle, let out a series of tiny, bubbly giggles. A profound, almost breathtaking silence descended upon their corner of the car. Michelle, who had been bracing for a fresh wave of tears, looked up, her own eyes wide with a mixture of shock and profound relief. The tension that had been a tight knot in her chest unraveled, a wave of warmth spreading through her limbs. She met Chris's gaze, and in his eyes she saw no pity, no judgment, only a deep well of empathy and a shared, quiet joy. He had not offered advice, not handed her a business card or a product. He had simply offered a moment of peace, a reminder that the most profound solutions often lay not in wealth or status, but in the most simple, heartfelt gestures of kindness. The hand puppet's magic was not in its fluff or its stitches, but in the pure, unselfish desire to create a moment of joy where only despair had existed. In that small, quiet space on the subway, Chris had given Michelle a gift more valuable than any inheritance. A moment to breathe, a moment to smile, and the powerful, humbling realization that sometimes the greatest help comes from the most unexpected places. That single, quiet moment on the subway became the pivot point of Michelle's entire week. A small yet profound shift in the gravitational pull of her life. The twins' curious giggles had been a sound she hadn't heard in what felt like an eternity. A precious melody that had replaced the jarring symphony of their cries. As the train rumbled on, she watched Chris and his daughter, Sophie, a silent observer of their simple, beautiful world. Sophie, her hand now intertwined with her father's, was whispering something to him, her head tilted up. He was listening, his full attention on her, a soft smile on his face. It was a picture of effortless connection, of a bond built on presence and genuine affection. A stark contrast to the transactional and often lonely world Michelle inhabited. She felt a pang of something she couldn't quite name, not envy, but a deep, aching longing for that kind of uncomplicated joy. She was a woman who was used to solving problems with a credit card, but in this moment, she understood that some of the most essential things in life could not be bought. The train slowed to a stop at her station, and a sense of panic fluttered in her chest. She couldn't just get off and walk away. She had to do something, say something, but what? Thank you felt too small, too inadequate to capture the immense gratitude she felt. As she maneuvered the double stroller toward the doors, she caught Chris's eye. He offered a small, gentle nod, a silent acknowledgement of their shared moment. It was a gesture that said, "I see you and it's okay." But Michelle needed more. She had to repay this kindness. As the door slid open, she blurted out, I can pay you. For that. For the quiet." The words tumbled out awkwardly, her embarrassment a hot flush on her cheeks. Chris's smile widened, but it was a different kind of smile now. It was tinged with a warm, genuine amusement. "You can't put a price on a little peace and a lot of imagination," he said, his voice soft. "Just pay it forward when you can." He gave a final friendly wave as the doors closed, separating their two worlds once again. Michelle's walk home was different. The city's noise, which had always felt like a personal assault, seemed to recede. She saw the mundane in a new light. A street musician's impromptu concert, a child chasing bubbles in the park, a couple laughing over coffee. She was seeing the small human moments she had been too exhausted to notice before. When she arrived at her sprawling penthouse, the silence felt different. It wasn't the oppressive stillness of her loneliness, but a peaceful quiet, a gift she had been given. The twins nestled in their cribs were sleeping soundly, their faces peaceful. Michelle sank into a plush chair, the worn-out image of the blue hand puppet imprinted on her mind. Chris's words, "Pay it forward," echoed in her thoughts. But how? She couldn't just walk up to a struggling stranger and hand them a puppet. It had to be a genuine gesture, something from the heart, not a performance. The next few days were a blur of sleepless nights and the relentless demands of two infants, but the memory of the subway still held its power. Michelle found herself searching for the puppet man. She took the same subway line at the same time, hoping to catch a glimpse of him, but he was nowhere to be found. She began to feel a familiar frustration, a sense of helplessness. She was a woman who was used to getting what she wanted, but this was different. It wasn't about money or status. It was about connection, and that was a currency she didn't know how to trade in. On the 5th day of her fruitless search, she found herself in a small, cramped art supply store, a place she had never set foot in before. She was looking for something, she didn't know what, when she saw them. A display of colorful, fluffy balls of yarn, googly eyes of all sizes, and fabric scraps. A small, familiar warmth spread through her chest. It was a clue. She returned to her penthouse, her arms laden with bags, and laid out her treasures on the floor of the nursery. For the first time in months, she felt a flicker of creativity, a pull to do something with her own two hands. She started with a base of soft blue fabric, and slowly, painstakingly, she began to stitch. Her fingers, accustomed to holding a diamond-encrusted phone, were clumsy at first, But she persevered. She sewed a body, stuffed it with fluffy cotton, and attached mismatched googly eyes. She gave it a mop of purple yarn for hair, a wide, crooked smile, and 2 felt paws. It wasn't perfect, not like the one Chris had, but it was her own. It was a tangible expression of her gratitude, her understanding, her new purpose. She made a few more. A green one with big floppy ears, a pink one with a single eye, a rainbow-striped creature with long skinny arms. She filled a large canvas bag with her creations, a motley crew of handmade puppets. The bag felt heavy, but it was a good kind of heavy, filled with a purpose she had never known before. She began to carry it with her everywhere she went, not knowing when or where she would find the right moment. The city, once a daunting maze, now felt like a hunting ground for kindness, a place where she could finally pay it forward. She gave a small, purple puppet to a crying child in a grocery store, a shy green monster to a lonely-looking boy at the park, and a big, friendly, rainbow puppet to a tired-looking cashier at her local coffee shop. The look on their faces, the shock, the surprise, and then the slow, grateful smile, was more fulfilling than any business deal she had ever closed. She was still a millionaire, but her true wealth now lay in these small, quiet moments of connection. The subway man had not just quieted her babies, he had awakened her own sense of humanity, reminding her that true magic wasn't in what you had, but in what you gave. The puppets were no longer just toys. They were small ambassadors of joy, a legacy of a single act of kindness on a crowded subway car.